Peterbilt back at my shop. There was a leaking power steering hose. I was out of town, so they replaced the hoses, and now we have absolutely no power steering until you let off the throttle. You can't move it. So we got to find out what's going on, whether we got lines on wrong, air in the steering gearbox, or what the problem is. And they're obviously struggling because they're curbing the tires, and they bent this bumper out again. Remember, we were underneath here when I bent it back, but they've hit something again. Let's see if we can get the hood open now. So originally we had a power steering line leaking going to the gearbox, and I'm not sure what has transpired here, why we have two different power steering lines, but obviously this isn't. God, that's hot. Those are really hot. And you got it wrapped around here. So I think the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to crack open the line that comes from the power steering pump and see if we have the correct pressure line on, because this is a 3-line system. So it's got a pump down there, it's got a suction line, a pressure line, and probably a bypass, I'm guessing. I don't know, I'm not familiar with this, but I'm thinking as you're going down the road and this thing's making pressure and you don't need it, it has to have a way to bypass. So it's gonna have to do it in the pump or in the gearbox, and then go back to the reservoir. So I'm wondering if our return and the pressure, the poppet relief, the pressure relief, and the pressure line happen to be possibly switched. I don't know. We're gonna have to see. But it's a bear to steer, as you can imagine. There's something else I was gonna do. I had it the other day. They had an airline rubbed through, so I went out and tracked down the leak, and we nursed it back to my place, and I replaced the airline from the tank to the foot valve. And while I was at it, I went ahead and put a new governor on, since we had the system down. And I don't know if it's recovering any faster now with a new governor or what, but they're having an issue where the secondary side would go quite a bit lower than the primary. Oh, I replaced the check valve too, because I figured we want to make sure it wasn't a check valve that just wasn't letting it get air at times. So anyways, let's look at that air pressure, see where we're at. Oh yeah, we're okay. We're right about the same all the way down. That's good. Okay, let's get some lines, some wrenches. We're gonna get a drain pan underneath this and crack a couple lines, see what we got going on. Okay, now we're just gonna crack this loose. I've already broke it loose, so it'd be easy to get to. What we want to see is if we got pressure coming out of here. Got a trickle. Wouldn't say we really got pressure, but especially as loose as that was. So now we're going to take this one loose. Nothing out of there. The next question is, we know we have plenty of fluid, so the fluid's topped off. So the next question is, are these run the wrong way? Do they have the pressure going to the side it shouldn't be? Because they're apparently the same fitting. That feels tight, like there's pressure there. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, I can tell you based on the way that this is, how tight this is, that that's the pressure side of the pump. So now we have to look this pump up and see which is the pressure side. So let me get that cleaned up. You can tell by how tight that nut was coming off and how easy this one was coming off. Yeah, you can see this one, it's like barely anything. I mean, as far as it's got fluid, but it's not pressured like the other side. The other side's real hard to turn. I think either the same size fitting or the same size on the pump. Yeah, this one here, I mean, it really feels like there's pressure on the nut. First, I'm gonna pull this apart. I'm gonna pull this filter out, make sure there's no, and drain this reservoir, and make sure there's no crud down in there, anything weird. Well, I'm waiting on the file to download on the specs for this particular gearbox, so I can find out which side's the inlet pressure, which side's out. So that's why I'm doing this right now, just so I can be useful. I don't like using crescent wrenches, but these are all fresh, so it shouldn't be a big deal. I tried bleeding the gearbox too, and that didn't do any difference. But when it's running, it just feels like there's a strain on these hoses, like this one particular.
Since we don't know for sure if this was routed correctly, he's just taking everything off and gonna reroute it the correct way.
The hose burst, so they replaced the hose, and they replaced all of them, which is okay. But then they couldn't get the power steering to work, so they took the pump off of the other Peterbilt and put it on this one, which is okay, but that didn't fix it either. So it makes me think that we have either a line on wrong. When I see we, I mean, you know, whoever put it on, or we have air trapped in the gearbox. So the way this system works, since I've taken this apart, I got a little bit of an idea now. Drape this over so it can drain out. The pumps fluid, obviously, and it creates pressure. Comes the gearbox. The gearbox utilizes the pressure and then sends the fluid back to the reservoir. It sends it back to the reservoir on this one, the center. It comes up the center, and this tube right here is drilled and ported where the filter sits. So the return fluid has to come through the filter before it can be utilized again. This is a pressure relief, meaning that if the pump's building too much pressure and you're not utilizing it, it has a way to bypass and return the fluid back to the reservoir without blowing every hose out, because it would just, you know, continue to make pressure until it could release somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the hoses off. We're going to check every hose for restrictions or anything goofy going on, because I don't want to sit here and try and guess and, you know, do backtracking. So I think it's better for me just to start over. Just going to take everything off, and we'll inspect everything piece by piece. I don't know why there's two hoses of one brand and make and one of another, but the other thing is, I don't know if these are on the right side of the pressure on that side, because if you raise the RPM up to 1500, 2000, you have some power steering. It's still not 100%, but you have some. So I don't know. Guess I'm just gonna get them all off, drain them all out, check them out. So this is what was in the reservoir. So I drained it all out and took the filter out and cleaned the reservoir out really well, brake parts cleaner and towels, and get all that crap out of there. That sucks. That wasn't in there. I just threw that in there so it wouldn't end up in the tire. So I did all that, and I pulled all the lines off, and I blew through every single line that was on here, made sure it wasn't restricted, collapsed, or something weird. And then I looked at the pump. The pump has two outlets, and it's just like I was saying earlier, that one is pressure that goes to the gearbox, the other is bypassed. So when there's pressure buildup in the pump, it's not being utilized, it goes and pushes on a spring, overcomes a ball on a spring, and then when it does that, the pressure releases and comes back into the reservoir to be pumped again. And so the pump makes pressure, sends it out on this line into the gearbox. The gearbox, it goes around, utilizes the power assist, and the return comes down this way, and then it comes back into the bottom of the reservoir here. Now this line, they had that line made and it's a foot too long, so I just changed out that fitting because it wasn't 90, so I made it straight so it could, you know, kind of sweep in here and not be all weird. And then I put it back, I put it in clamps here so they won't rub anywhere. And I cleaned up the fittings while I had the reservoir completely drained, and resealed them because they were all gummed up and gross looking and leaking. Damp, not wet, but damp. So that's done. While I had that apart, there's a filter in here. So when the fluid comes from the gearbox in here to go back into this reservoir, it comes up the center, and there's a post in here that's drilled. And what happens is that fluid has to go from the inside of the filter through the filter and out before it touches the rest of the fluid, so it gets filtered again. So what I found out was on the pump itself, they had the lines reversed. That was the problem the whole time. The pressure line was coming up to the reservoir, and the relief valve, pop-off valve, was coming to here. So when the pop-off valve reaches pressure and higher RPMs, because this one's good for 6 gallons a minute is what that pump's good for, and 2,500 psi, and no higher than 3,000 RPMs. That's a spec on that pump. So what was happening as you raise the RPMs, the pressure, which was already, it was run wrong, so it was going back into here. So you would increase pressure apparently, and the pop-off valve would let loose, and it would let some pressure flow through here. It's the best explanation I've got for right now. So everything's good. It works good going back and forth. I'm going to zip tie all this together, and we're going to go for a test drive, get all this stuff put together like it should be. It's not supposed to be run like that, but I think I run it a way that it won't rub on anything and should be okay. And then I've hosed everything down with brake parts cleaner, so if there is a leak, we should be easy to see. So I'm going to get this stuff out. I got to put the cover back on here. I think we're okay, but I've been working the air out. I got bottle jacks under the front steer axle, so it's easier to take the wheels back and forth, but I did that at first. Now I've let the bottle jacks down so we're actually sitting on the tires. That way we know that we're actually getting power assist. So let's start it up and we'll see. And then let's see what we got here. Okay, there we go. Look at that. No noise. We got power assist. One reason they tell you to jack these up is so you don't have resistance to the tires. So if you're trying to bleed the air out, if the tires are up, you have less chance of this, because there's nothing trying to twist the tire back the way it was. It's just free, able to turn freely up in the air. But it's working now, so I'll let it run a while, and while it's doing that, I've got new lenses, or whatever you call it, for these indicators for here and here. Well, I don't want to come out of there. Anyways, I picked them up. I've got a left turn, right turn, low air, diff lock, low air. There's something else, temperature, I think. Yeah, so we're gonna put these in real quick. Got new indicator lenses. Diff lock and low air. So that works. You hear the buzzer for a few minutes. pressure better than it was since we changed that regulator and that check valve, so that's good. Okay, let's go ahead and close the hood down and take it for a drive and see what she does, see if it's okay. Before I do that, maybe I'm gonna take a minute to look at the frame where I did the splice and see if it's okay. You know, just kind of inspect it and see if it's having any issues or anything like that. But as far as the power steering is concerned, I think we're there. You know, I'm not on the throttle at all. It's idling pretty low. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that real quick. So this truck is running, I guess I should finish this up. I zip tied this stuff. I had some really heavy zip ties. Got it all zip tied so it shouldn't be rubbing and moving anywhere. And I put the cover back on here. This truck has been running for a few months now, and they run it 7 days a week, every day. And I'm going to take a look at the frame here where the splice is. I want to inspect this and make sure we're not having any issues, any cracks, anything that would lead me to believe that there's something going on. So I want to get up underneath this real quick, and just every time, periodically, as I get the truck to do something to it, I just want to take a look and see. Let me get some cardboard and get under here. So basically I want to look at the frame, because my splice is in this area, so I want to inspect the frame back this way, look for any cracks in here, any bolts that have broken. Like if something flexes, your smallest bolts, the 3/8 bolts I have in here, they'll typically break first. Look up inside here, and I'm looking for any rust stains, because if anything cracks, when it cracks and water gets in it, you get a rust stain between the two pieces of metal. It looks okay here, but I'm going to do a much better job of inspecting than I am holding the camera, because you know, I'm not paying as much attention to this as I am this right now. And you see our splice stops right here. That's where our inside liner is, and there's been no issues with it at all so far. Get to the other side here. Tank has a leak in the front, of course, but I don't see anything here. No broken bolts, nothing shifted, nothing moved, nothing discolored. You know, it's just a good idea to just get a look at it and keep looking at it. When I see a problem here, need to get this zip tied in. That's the fuel line. That'll be the next thing. That'll be the next thing to fail. They cut the zip ties loose and never zip tied it back. Alright. I have to get that zip tied up. This is the, you know, this is what you need to do with a truck. You need to spend some time underneath it, looking, inspecting, being familiar with what's normal, you know, and then catching things like this before they're a problem. We replaced this line here, and I had the driver was here with me, and he was underneath there. I had no idea that he cut that loose and didn't zip tie it back up or even mention it. So we'll take care of that. But I think as far as the splice is concerned, I think we're okay. I mean, this truck's typically 65,000 pounds going down the road, and we've had no troubles yet, but doesn't mean we won't. It just means we need to, you know, keep inspecting it. Even after, I mean, years down the road, you still need to be looking at this and make sure it's okay. So I'm going to get some zip ties real quick and get that taken care of. So that pinion seal is just about as damp as it was before, so that's not a big deal. And brakes look good. We had to replace these U-bolts, so we're looking for any rust streaks or any indications that the U-bolts are loose. Looks like the axles are doing okay. They haven't cracked yet. At least that one hasn't. Remember in the other video I welded these up because they were all busted up. They were in really bad shape. Looks like they're okay. I'm gonna go ahead and hit these U-bolts again with the impact just to be sure they're okay. See anything else here? It all looks good. We're going to move back a little farther now. I'm looking at the bushings too, making sure there's nothing weird with the bushings and the mounts of these U-bolts. You know, making sure they're all tight. Shouldn't be able to move any washers, you know what I mean? Looking at the brake chambers, it's obvious this oil leak that the engine has, or oil leaks, which is several, is spraying the whole back side of this truck. If you worked on it, you'd fix them oil leaks, because it's a mess. I'm gonna get moved back farther now. Looks like we're okay here too. No leaks as of yet. This rear output here's leaking about the same. I didn't get too concerned about this because it doesn't have any play in it, and I didn't know how long these axles were going to make it. Alright, so this is a good example of rust streaking as we would look for here. You know, so we're gonna go ahead and, well, it looks like it's loose, but it sure ain't. But we're gonna go ahead and get an impact and get on these. Check the airbags, look good. It just got greased. Pins are here. These are tight. Like I said, I just want to give it a good looking over, just to be sure there's nothing, no surprises anywhere. And this truck's only been on the road a few months, you know. It's much better to do this not in the sunlight, because you can get a better look at what you got going on here. Check, let me get turned around here. We'll check these rear axles too. This is the one that I welded that like pyramid looking deal on it. So far so good. I don't see any leaks. I was very apprehensive about this because I thought it might be a problem someday again. Everything looks good, nothing's rubbing. So it looks good. We got some rust streaks here, but keep in mind that I cleaned that off, so it was bare metal. Wheel seals look good. Pins are all in good shape. Brake chambers look good. Alright. So now all this looks good. We'll go back and look at the lift axle. No air leaks. All the mounts look good. Remember, we made this bracket here, and we made this here, and we made the drop on the sides. And the wheel seals look tight and clean. Brake shoes look good. Nothing's leaking. Same thing over here. I don't see anything loose. Everything's in place. All the valves look good. I don't hear any air leaks back here. Airbags look okay. Mounting bolts look good. Looks good. Tires were all holding air. Yeah, I don't see anything here. All the mounting bolts are good. Yeah, I think we're okay. I think we're in pretty good shape back here. Now I'll get out and I'll look at the mounting brackets for the lift axle, make sure there's no cracks in the welds or anything like that, that, you know, maybe something failed. Air pressure's working right. It'll get down to about 90. Compressor kicks back on, brings it up to 125 and kicks out. Doing a lot of stops now so I can test it, just to make sure that it's what I think it is. If I can get that pressure down to about 90. compressor will kick on again. Let's see. I think it's starting to, yeah, it's starting to climb again. Okay, we're good. Alright, no big deal. Take it for a cruise, make sure everything's okay, temperature and all that stuff, and have them come get it. Guess that's it for this dose. Probably do a little bit more next time.